Hey y'all, this is Little Lad 92 here with a deck profile and a regionals update. Starting off, the regionals I partook in was the Seattle regionals on February 2nd, so about last Saturday. The deck I ran was Disaster Dragon. It did fairly well. At the end of the regionals, I was 6-3 and I got 45th. During that time, we had a mass showing of players, about over 320 or so. So at the end of the day, they allowed the top 48 to get invites, and it was fortunate enough that I barely made it on there, being 45th. So before I talk about my matchups, I thought I would do the deck profile on my Disaster Dragons. So let's get started with the monster lineup. Of course, we have the one Red Eyes. A little sad that it got hit to 1, but this even proved to myself this deck is still a big threat even with the 1. Red Eyes does not always need to be there, and Feature Fusion does not slow this deck down. 2 Wyverns, just in case, to bring back the Red Eyes. And the big boss, the 3 Quackmere Dragos, put in a lot of work in my matches. Surprisingly did fairly well against windups, giving them a limited access to their extra deck. 2 Delta Flyers to utilize synchroing options, and having that ability to level up monsters gives me access ranging from 6s to 8s fairly easy, and having another monster to XC into. 1 Exploder Dragon, just used to get over anything that is fairly too big that I can normally run over if I cannot get the Red Eyes Darkest Metal. 3 Masked Dragons, of course, for defensive purposes and to get the Delta Flyer or Exploder Dragon quicker to the field. For the non-dragons, we have the 3 Thunder Kings. Worked fairly well in most matchups. Stopped like 6 Sams I ended up facing, so searching, windups for their factories. And comboing fairly well with Drago is a big shutdown against most decks. Also won the 3 Veilers for typical monster negation. Worked fairly well in Insectors to make sure they stop. Now that Insectors were teching in Lances, you can't really expect like Fiendish Chains or Skilljins to work. Veilers are like the best option. And 1 Gorse for attack defensive purposes, and it's the only other big boss monster in this deck aside from Red Eyes. So monster line was fairly well. I tried to not depend on so much summoning beat sticks. Mainly it was Delta Flyers that would help me get access to anything huge. So yep, we'll talk about that later when I get to the extra deck. But for spells, they're really basic. You have Monster Reborn, Dark Hole, Heavy Storm. 2 MSTs only. I wanted to see about a 3rd, but didn't really need it. 2 Dualities for Search, 1 Book of Moon, and 2 Forbidden Lances. Great card. Makes sure that I can protect all my monsters at times, and if I need to run over anything that is a bit strong, Lance will take care of it. For the trap lineup, we have Basic Judgment, the 2 Warnings, 2 Bottomless Trap Holes, and 2 Call the Haunteds worked really well in this deck. When facing certain decks, it really depends on what to hit. I don't always have to go for the Red Eyes Darkest Metal. I can go for Drago if I know they're trying to special summon into Lights or Darks. For example, like Dragonfly's effect kicking off, chain this to Dragonfly's effect, special summon Drago. Now they cannot summon Centipede or Mantis or anything like that. Or if they try to pull off a Surge, like 6 Amps trying to play Smoke Signal, chain Call the Haunted, bring back Thunder King, and now they can't search. 2 Mirror Forces, 1 Torrential Tribute. I was really debating on running 2 and 2 of which kind. At this time, Mirror Force seemed to be the better choice to run at 2 while Torrential stayed at 1, because this deck I already had a lot of cards that stop summonings, so Mirror Force was just to help stop attacks going through. And 1 teched Starlight Road because Torrential's at 2, Mirror Force is at 2, there's Heavy Storm, there's Dark Hole. There's just a lot. There are just so many cards out there that destroy more than one, so one Starlight Road really helps. For the extra deck, it's really where I had interesting tech choices. So of course, you have the Gore's Token. One Chimera tech for like Gearjas or even possible Machina decks, and then the windups. I have this Cyber Dragon Sighted. One Ally Catastor, self-explanatory. One Ancient Fairy Dragon. Sometimes pull out for defenses, but I really would only bring this out if I faced a deck like Dark Worlds or Gravekeepers, anything that uses a field spell, really. One Blackwing Dragon, mainly for Chainburn. I did hear that they were at regionals, but I did not end up facing one or even saw one. I just knew they were there. So having that Blackwing was just for good reassurance. Black Rose for nuking the field if need be. Colossal Fighter, mainly for 6 Sams and Heroes. I didn't really bring it out too often, but it was really just a great card there just to have. Exploder Dragonwing, mainly used to get over monsters that can only be destroyed, like Reaper or Marshmallow, if anything. Or even like Fairies if they use Gillen Duo. Just make sure that it kills it, and at the same time I hit my opponent for some damage. One Orient Dragon. I am actually really glad that this stayed in the extra deck. Before, I was debating on taking it out, but when my second matchup was with 6 Sams, I was really, really glad it was in here because there was a time where I was going to poke for life points, but they summoned Ancient Fairy and I couldn't get over it. I was trying to look for many options and I saw Orient Dragon and got rid of Ancient Fairy, attacked for game, and all that. And it's another way to get rid of their Shien if I was able to. Also, Red Dragon Archfiend, another card I am so glad was in here, because when my opponent starts playing on the defensive, he is a great card to start clearing all that and finally hitting for a game or for life points. One Scrap Dragon, self-explanatory. If I do have Floating Call of the Haunted, it's a real great way to recycle it. Pardon me. 2 Stardust Dragon, one for Synchroing and one for the Road. And for X's, we have the number 17 Leviathan, Leviair the Sea Dragon, and 1 Zenmaines. Now, my side deck is probably what gave me most of my wins during regionals. A lot of my choices in there, I was debating on what to run, but I do not regret what I have in there because they really did help me push through. The 3 Cyber Dragons I mentioned before for the Gearjas, Machinas, and windups. 2 DD Crows. These were mainly for if I was going to face Dark Worlds to get rid of Grapha, but I didn't end up facing that many decks really where I needed this. I did face Insectors where DD Crow was just for the Hornet, but wasn't that big of a need. 2 Electric Viruses for the obvious Dino Rabbit and Chaos Dragons. I did see them there. I did not end up facing Dino Rabbits, but I did face into Chaos Dragons. And 1 Galaxy Eyes. I actually only have this in here because I forgot to take it out, because the deck before was Lad Disaster, so it used the Totem Dragons. I actually forgot to take this out, so I had an extra card for side. I just didn't put anything in there. 2 Compulses, mainly to use against decks that have a whole bunch of monsters that just can't be destroyed. Mainly like for Zenmaines or a possible Stardust or anything like that. Or like a lot of hero players that I played, it helped against the Shining because they don't get their monsters back now. 2 Lightning Prism Mirrors. These were mainly in here because I knew that Light Rays were getting hyped. Heretics are still fairly there. And then the traditional Chaos Dragon plays with their Light Sworns. 2 Shadow Imprisonings for the Dark World and Insectors. And the once a turn Torrential Tribute, sorry, that I keep going in between for Mirror Force and Torrential. Now talking about the matches for the day, each match I would say was really, really challenging. There were lots of times where I was backed into a corner, and I just kind of had to think like right on the spot what to do. A lot of them were brain teasers. My first matchup was actually a wind-up deck. I was facing a kid that used them, and never underestimate someone like that. He was fairly good. It's just that I was well prepared by having anything like Solemns to Bottomless to Veilers to stop their plays. It was very fortunate that I had all that set up. And that match came to a win. I 2-0'd. My second matchup was against Six Samurais, which I was fairly ready for, especially because of Orient Dragon. I'm pretty sure it was the only game where I brought him out. I ended up 2-0'ing, but I think the mistake that he made, this player, don't get me wrong, this 6-Sam player was really good, but the mistake he made was that when he was siding, we took a look at his sides after the game, and he actually sided for Chaos Dragons because he thought that's what I was playing. So he sided in Soul Takers, Max C's, and things like that, but they proved to be ineffective because I wasn't running Chaos Dragons, I was running Disaster. So that match ended in a win. My third match was against Insectors, and yeah, that definitely proves that Insectors are not crippled just by having only one Hornet and one Dragonfly. That one match was one of the fair hardest because, well, it's Insectors. They're just never going to be easy. I ended up winning with 2-1. Really what gave me the win was, of course, my side deck, because well prepared against most what I would face. My fourth match actually was where things started going downhill. I lost my fourth one, and ironically, I lost against Chaos Dragons, where using my Disaster Dragon deck, I thought Chaos Dragons would have been my best matchup for being the most well prepared, mainly because of Drago. But sadly, in all 3 games that I played, I did not see him in hand. So it was very unfortunate. I lost the first game. Second game, I barely pulled a win. I was really hanging on to Thunder King the whole time. But I was lucky enough to win the second match, but the third one, he took me down, and I was sad that I did not see Drago anywhere. Fifth match, I picked up again. I picked up the win against a Ab-Zero deck. That deck actually took me by surprise because I was not expecting a traditional Ab-Zero deck to show up. He played Destiny Draw, and I was really wondering what he was playing, and as I watched closely, yes, it was later revealed to be Ab-Zero. That deck's fairly challenging just because of their Absolute Zero, being able to blow up anything on my field. So, of course, the Starlight Roads, and I would obviously go into Stardust Dragon as fast as possible. My sixth match, though, ended up in a loss. I was against Wind-Ups. That game, though, I was not really satisfied with. Ended up being a loss in time, but it may have been just because my opponent ended up stalling. When we first began our match, it seriously maybe took him like 10 minutes or so just to unside his cards that he should have done in the last match. So he won the first round. Second round, we ended up going to time, and I lost for having less life points by the end of 5th turn. Seventh match, though, was ironically against, again, a wind-up deck, but this one was more fairly challenging because I at least got a fighting chance, and I lost from actually having life punch drop to 0. But yeah, that just goes to show wind-ups are really good. They don't need their hand loop. They never did. They had a lot of options already, and I am fairly confident that wind-ups are going to see themselves on the ban list soon. My 8th match was against Chaos Agents. I did know that Agents were getting in the rise again, but to face a Chaos Agent deck was fairly easy pair up because this time I finally got to see Drago in my hand, and I was so happy. I ended up 2-1ing him, and fairly easy for the Dragos being out, or the Thunder Kings helping to stop their Earth from searching, or anything like that, or even stopping Xyz that Drago cannot stop. and that match ended up in a win. The ninth and final match was against a Bubblegate deck. It was just another one of those decks that really caught me off guard because I was not expecting it. That deck was pretty challenging to face against when I had to kind of adapt between a Bubble Beat deck that could switch to Hero Gate fairly easy. When I spoke to the player afterwards, he was really just building a deck that kind of wanted to not depend on one set strategy, and I commemorate for that because it really did work and it gave me a run for my money. That this Bubble Beat or Bubble Gate player got as far as to the top tables, and with the unexpected factor that Bubble Beat can change into Hero Gates as fast as possible when need be. But again, it was mainly because facing that Ab-Zero really hurt. Shining and all that I was not scared of because of Drago and Thunder Kings or anything else like that. But yep. But taking that last game as a win, I ended up being 6-3 and I got 45th place. And ironically, the 6-Sam player that I played against in round 2 ended up getting 47th place. So I commemorate him for that. It was really great to see him at the top. Overall, the Seattle Regionals I was at was a really great experience. Many trades, many people to meet. I got to see some old friends and familiar faces from the Seattle region where I used to go. I'm now up in Bellingham, so I don't see them quite as often. But it's nice to see them once again in the Yu-Gi-Oh community, and to now have been qualified for nationals. I hope to go. Last year I did not go when I qualified because none of my team members ended up going, and it just didn't really seem that big of a worth it to go all by myself. So I am really hoping that come next regionals they are able to qualify so that I don't go solo. I know I might sound like a baby for just not wanting to go by myself, but it just makes that experience that much more fun. I know we can go there as spectators, but it'd probably be that good feeling to know that you've qualified for Nats, for the national qualifications or qualifiers. But yeah, I hope to tweak this deck a little more, see how far it can take me. I was thinking about running other decks when I went to regionals, but Disaster Dragon has always been there with me. I loved using it, and it just hasn't let me down as far. But yep, that is the Disaster Dragon deck profile and the Seattle Regionals update. I hope you all enjoyed. Remember to comment, rate, and subscribe. Remember that I love you all. Alright, Little Lad signing out. Peace.